The wind was a blade, carving its way across the frozen landscape of the Alaskan interior. It carried with it the scent of pine and the bite of an oncoming storm, a harsh lullaby for those who chose to call this unforgiving land home. For Elias Vance, a man in his late 20s with a farmer's broad shoulders and a prospector's restless eyes, the wind was a constant reminder of the fine line between survival and oblivion. He'd come north a year ago with a dream of gold, but the earth had given him nothing but frozen soil and calloused hands. Now, with the first true chill of winter, he was desperate. His worn boots crunched on the icy path as he trudged toward the settlement. The sun, a pale coin in the grey sky, offered no warmth. His breath plumed in front of him, a fleeting ghost in the cold air. The settlement was a cluster of log cabins, their chimneys spewing thin columns of smoke that dissipated into the vast white sky. He had to find shelter, and soon. The last of his food was gone, and the temperature was dropping fast. He spotted a cabin on the outskirts, set apart from the others. It was larger, sturdier, with a thick layer of snow blanketing its roof. Smoke billowed from its chimney, promising heat and a refuge from the killing cold. This was the home of Lyra, a woman whispered about in hushed tones around the few campfires of the region. They called her the Widow of the North, a woman who had lost her husband, a respected fur trapper, to a bear attack just a few months prior. Elias approached the cabin, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. He raised a fist and knocked. The sound was swallowed by the silence. He knocked again, harder this time. The door creaked open, revealing a woman framed by the warm, amber light of a fire. Lyra was not what Elias had expected. He had heard tales of a woman hardened by grief, a shadow of her former self. But the woman before him was a force of nature, her face marked by hardship, but her eyes holding a fierce, undeniable light. She was wrapped in a thick wool blanket, her dark hair a stark contrast to the white snow at her feet. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice low and edged with caution. I'm a traveler," Elias stammered, his body shivering. "My supplies are gone. I need shelter for the night. The storm is coming." Lyra's gaze was like a physical weight, assessing him. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the thinness of his coat, the tremble in his hands. The firelight behind her made her seem almost ethereal, a figure from a legend. A long moment passed, stretched taut by the cold. Then she stepped aside. "Come in," she said, her voice softer this time. "But understand this. I offer no charity. The North teaches us that every gift has a price." Elias stumbled inside, the warmth hitting him like a physical blow. He held his hands out to the fire, savoring the feeling of life returning to his frozen fingers. The cabin was sparse but clean, the walls lined with furs and dried herbs. A single pot bubbled over the fire, and the smell of savory stew filled the air. "Sit," Lyra commanded, pointing to a small stool by the hearth. "I don't take on strangers lightly. Many have tried to take advantage of my situation since my husband passed. So tell me, why should I trust you?" He looked up, meeting her gaze. "I have nothing to offer but my word, ma'am. I'm a farmer by trade, from Ohio. I came here for the promise of gold, but I found only a promise of cold. I just need to survive this winter. If you give me shelter, I'll work for it. I can mend fences, chop wood, hunt, whatever you need." Lyra listened, her face unreadable. She walked to the pot, scooped a generous portion of stew into a wooden bowl, and handed it to him. Elias took it greedily, the warmth seeping into his hands. He ate slowly, savoring every bite. It was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted, a mix of caribou meat, wild onions, and something he couldn't quite place. It was a taste of home in a land that felt utterly foreign. When he was finished, he looked at her. "Thank you." She nodded, then looked out the small window. The snow had begun to fall, thick and fast, a white curtain descending upon the world. The cabin, with its warm light and the crackle of the fire, felt like a safe haven in a hostile sea. "The storm will be here soon," she said, turning back to him, "and it will last for days. I can offer you a place by the fire for tonight, but you will need a place to sleep. My bed is the only one in this cabin. It is a large bed, and I have many furs. The north is a land of harsh choices. Either you warm my bed tonight or you freeze outside. What do you choose?" Elias felt the blood drain from his face. He had expected a transaction, work for shelter, but this was different. He saw no malice in her eyes, only a brutal, stark honesty born of survival. The cold outside was a real, tangible threat. He could feel it pressing against the cabin walls, a silent predator waiting. The offer was not a seduction, but a proposal of pure, pragmatic necessity. "You don't have to fear my intentions," Lyra continued, as if reading his thoughts. "There will be no unwanted advances from me, nor will I tolerate any from you. This is a matter of survival, nothing more. We will sleep in the same bed with a clear divide between us, and in the morning the agreement begins. You will work for your keep, and I will have a man to help me through the winter. Do you accept the terms?" He looked at the fire, then at the snow-choked window. The choice was clear. There was no pride to be found in freezing to death. "I accept," he said, his voice steady. Lyra nodded, a flicker of something Elias couldn't name. Relief, perhaps, or a simple acknowledgement of the practical, crossing her face. She banked the fire, the flames shrinking to a golden glow. The cabin was cast in a soft, welcoming darkness. He lay down on a makeshift bed of furs near the hearth, while Lyra settled into her bed. The silence was thick, but for the rhythmic crackle of the fire and the wind howling outside. Elias closed his eyes, the warmth of the cabin a stark contrast to the memory of the freezing night. The offer had been shocking, but in this world, survival was the only currency that mattered. As he drifted to sleep, he couldn't help but wonder what the morning would bring, and what this strange, powerful woman would demand of him. The morning brought a muffled, grey light. Elias awoke to the low sound of Lyra working, already splitting kindling by the hearth with a small axe. He sat up, stretching his sore muscles. The cabin was a place of work, not comfort. "The fire needs more wood," she said, her voice brisk. "The water barrels are empty. We'll need to break the ice." Elias nodded. He was eager to prove his worth, spending the morning chopping wood. The rhythmic swing of the axe filled the air. Lyra worked alongside him, her movements strong and efficient. Their silent partnership was forged in the necessity of survival. As the sun began to set, a different, more relaxed energy filled the cabin. "You're good with your hands," she said, as he mended a tear in his coat. "My father was a tailor," he said softly. "He taught me. Said a man should be able to mend his own things. A useful skill," she replied. "Most men come north only to take." Elias felt a prick of guilt. He had come to take gold. He hadn't thought about building. Lyra's gaze drifted to a faded photograph of her husband. "He was a trapper," she said, her voice a little softer. "He taught me everything. We built this cabin together. It was our life. I'm sorry," he said. "Sorry doesn't bring a man back. What matters is what you do now. We'll make it through this winter, you and I, but it won't be easy." Over the next few weeks, their arrangement became a routine. Elias chopped wood and hunted. Lyra, for her part, taught him to identify animal tracks and gather plants for medicine. The silent understanding between them grew, built on mutual respect. One evening, a piercing crack echoed from the woods. Lyra's head snapped up. "A bull moose. It's too close." "I'll go with you," Elias said, grabbing the axe. They moved through the forest, following the immense hoofprints in the moonlight. The moose was a colossal shadow. Lyra had her rifle ready, but a wounded moose was far too dangerous. They worked together, making noise to herd it towards the frozen creek. The ice groaned under its weight, a terrifying symphony. Unnerved, the moose finally veered away, disappearing into the trees. Elias and Lyra stood for a moment, catching their breath. "You were right," Lyra said. a rare smile on her face. That was a good plan. Elias felt a warmth spread through him. It was the feeling of being trusted, of being seen as a partner. He had come here for gold, but he was starting to realize that the true wealth was in the connections forged against the cold. Remember to subscribe to the channel for the next thrilling chapter of An Alaskan Tale. The long winter deepened its grip, and the bond between Elias and Lyra grew stronger. Their routine became a comfortable rhythm. They spoke of their pasts and the lives they had left behind. One afternoon, Lyra returned from a hunting trip with a deep gash on her leg. Elias immediately took charge. He cleaned the wound with whiskey and, with Lyra's instruction, stitched it closed. "You have a good hand, Elias," she said, her voice strained. "You've taken a good hold of this life." "I'm just doing what needs to be done," he replied. For the next few weeks, Lyra was confined to the cabin. Elias took on all the chores without complaint. He would read to her from the one worn book in the cabin and listen as she recounted tales of the Alaskan people. He learned about community and respect for the land. One evening, as he tended to the fire, Lyra reached out and placed a hand on his arm. "Elias," she began, "you've saved my life. You've become more than just a hired hand to me." He looked at her, at the strength and wisdom in her eyes. The memory of the widow he had heard about was a distant echo. "You saved me too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was lost out there. I came here for something I couldn't find, but I found something better. I found you." The unspoken feelings between them finally broke the surface. They spent the night talking, not of practical matters, but of their dreams and the future that was now beginning to feel possible. As the days grew longer and the sun's warmth returned, a new sense of hope filled the cabin. Elias and Lyra stood side by side, watching the world awaken. The air was alive with the sound of melting ice and returning birds. One morning, Elias sat with Lyra by the fire. He had saved her, and she had saved him. The agreement they had made was long since forgotten. He wasn't a farmer desperate for shelter, and she wasn't a grieving widow. They were just two people, ready to face whatever came next. "I was planning to leave soon," Elias said, breaking the silence. "The thaw is coming. I could try to make my way back south." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with vulnerability. "And what would you do there, Elias? What is it you're looking for that you haven't already found here?" He looked at her, at the life they had built together. He had come here for gold, but he had found something far more valuable: a partner, a purpose, and a home. He reached out and took her hand. "I'm not looking for anything anymore, Lyra. I'm home." Don't miss the final heartwarming conclusion of An Alaskan Tale. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of survival and human connection.